Well, first of all, Morgan Stedman, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Musica&Mezcal. And I think we have a really good, chapter or episode because we are talking, you are a musician and we are talking about music therapy.
Yes.
And this podcast is all about music or people around in the music industry. So I love to hear the story. First of all, you and your musician background and also about the things that you are doing with the music therapy. But cheers.
Great. Cheers.
And do you want mezcal?
Sure.
Okay.
Won't say no to mezcal.
Okay. So, Morgan, you are from capital, right? From the capital, Ottawa.
I am from the capital. Yeah. Grew up in Ottawa. Grew up with a brother and two very loving parents. Had a very lucky and wonderful childhood. And I guess we'll start with my intro to music.
Okay.
If that's where that leads me right away. Before I even grow up a little bit, music was a huge part of my childhood. Very musical family that I came from. Most Christmases, Thanksgivings were just filled with music. Almost every cousin and aunt and uncle playing some kind of musical instrument, which was amazing. So grew up in Ottawa, and then...
Sorry, funny fact about Canada, because I just realized today that the capital of this country is not the big city of the country.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think that Toronto is the capital. Yeah. Which makes sense.
Yeah. Like every country, like, Mexico City, or Washington, D.C., or, I don't know, Buenos Aires, or Paris, or London.
Yeah.
And each country have the capital as a big city. And no, Canada. Canada is Ottawa, but it's not a small town.
Definitely not a small town, but Toronto's
the massive one.
Toronto's the big guy for sure. So I love growing up in Ottawa. And I think as a lot of people do, I took for granted what was home growing up and just was eager to get out as soon as I graduated high school and go somewhere else in Canada for university.
Okay.
And ended up going out to Halifax for like 8 years. I realize I'm kind of all over the place, so we'll jump back to the intro to music and growing up. Very musical family, very supportive musical family. And when I was about 5 or 6, had my first kind of piano lessons. And it was funny. I did them for about 2 years. And I remember liking them, but having quite a fear at a really young age of performing. Like anytime recitals came around, it would be terrifying for me to actually get up there and play.
To be on the stage.
Yeah, which is ironic now because I'm a performer and I love the spotlight. I remember that being a big part of it. And the other piece of it that I kind of laugh in retrospect now is the 2 years that I was learning piano, I was basically just copying what my piano teacher was doing. So I was basically faking learning music because she was taking me through, learning sheet music and playing songs. And instead of reading the actual sheet music, I would just be listening to what she did and watching what she did on the piano and just copying it. Okay. And so one day, I remember about 2 years in, I remember she kind of caught on to it somehow and put a sheet of like a very basic, I don't know, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or something to that effect in front of me and asked me to play it, something that I should have been able to play by then. Yeah. And apparently I just burst into tears. And I was like, I can't do it. I have no idea. And she was like, oh my God, you've been copying me this whole time. So that story kind of shapes how a huge part of the first chapter of my musical journey went, was just by ear listening. And so those 2 years, aside from that, I didn't go into music lessons. I kind of just found my own journey with music through listening and trusting my ear with copying different things like YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So that, but aside from doing music at a young age, like 5 or 6 in those piano lessons and having a musical family, it wasn't until I was about in grade 8 that I saw some poster posted at my school for some talent competition. It was like, and I'd never done anything like it. And like I said, grew up with a musical family, grew up kind of singing together, did the school musicals, things like that. But it never really identified music as a huge part of my identity and personally. And I don't remember this as clearly as my mom does, but she tells it that she's like, I didn't tell any of my family, apparently. I just went and signed myself up for this talent competition. Okay. And that was kind of the start of my singing journey. And so I went and did this thing, and it was auditions at this huge, it was like a fair that they put on in the summers in Ottawa annually. And part of it, they were like, we're going to do this talent competition as part of it. And I ended up making it to the part that was part of the fair, which was like the top 10 people or whatever.
Nice.
Which was really exciting, especially as someone, I guess I obviously had a lot of confidence at the time to just go sign myself up.
And talent and...
Well, obviously there was some natural talent there for sure. But it was my first, I can't tell you where the drive came from to just go and do it, but that was definitely a part of my personality to just go and do things. As a kid, wasn't afraid of venturing out and trying different things on my own. So that was kind of the start of that. And at actually that competition, when I was singing, a woman in the crowd who ran a local singing group, essentially, came up to me afterwards and basically begged me to be a part of her
band group.
Well, not a band. It was so she was a singing coach, but also more so provided opportunities like to perform for young and aspiring musicians. And so that's something I ended up doing kind of grade 8 to grade 10 kind of thing, which was a lot of fun. Had a couple really cool experiences. We did a trip to Nashville and ended up going to like Elvis's home and got the tour of that. Okay. And got to perform outside the Grand Ole Opry, which was...
and then you're a little...
Yeah, I was like in grade 9. Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit performy.
Yeah.
There's coordinated dance moves that we're doing. But it was an amazing experience. It was working with other really talented youth who were all just exploring what music could be for them and getting some really amazing experiences at a really young age from a woman who was just so inspired herself by music and being able to support anybody wanting to pursue that path. So that was a wonderful start.
Your parents play some instruments?
Yeah, so my dad plays the piano and had piano lessons kind of growing up. He kind of drifts away and to it throughout the years, but definitely has some amazing musical talent in the DNA. His mother was an incredible piano player. She passed away when I was quite young, so I unfortunately didn't really get to explore that side of our relationship. But I've been told numerous times that's where I need to think where I get and my mom has an incredible voice, and plays the guitar as well. So just an artistic family.
Very cool, right? Because you have from both sides, the music.
Yeah. And people that adore music too, both my mom and dad. Aside from playing music themselves, music was just always playing in the house when I was growing up or on car trips or wherever we went. Playing music and singing along is one of the first things I think of when I think of my childhood.
Okay. And in this festival, you start singing and playing keyboards?
No, so I didn't start playing the guitar at the time. So at this point, I was just singing.
Okay.
And I kind of started teaching myself the guitar, I think in grade 10 or so, grade 10 or 11. So just as I was kind of coming out of being a part of that group,
Okay.
I went to a high school that in Ottawa called Canterbury High School. And it's an arts school for drama, visual arts, music, poetry. And then it was also included the people whose homeschool it was, just geographically. So there was a general program as well.
Okay.
So I went there for drama, and it was a pretty intense. Why are you laughing?
You just like and also because in English it sounds like drama.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Yeah. But cool
it's
that
not
you
far
have
from.
because down there in Mexico we have like a high schools that is like a technicals, like you go to programming, like it's the regular program from the high school, but also you take classes for programming or for graphic design.
Okay, and you
Like,
can choose.
you can choose or by if you have a great level of English, then you can take French.
Okay, cool.
But not for like in high school have classes for music, art, and that for me is like amazing that you can have access to a high school like that.
Oh my God, it was incredible. And I felt so lucky to be a part of a school, not only that was valuing and offering the arts, but it so translated to just the atmosphere and the energy around the school. It was so open. It was so positive. As kind of accompanies the arts a lot of times, it's people who are creative and expressing themselves, and it was a safe place to do so, which is, it's incredible. I feel super lucky to have been able to go on there. But yeah, so while I was there, it became a little more intensive in grade 11 and 12. It was because it was a specialized school, a lot more started adding on the plate, just in terms of outside projects of plays or different performances or whatnot. So that was part of the reason I stepped out of the group that I was doing in. I kind of felt it was really amazing and fun, but I wasn't craving as much the group performance, matching outfits, learning the routines. It was really fun for a while, and I felt like it had maybe run its course for me. And that's kind of when I started teaching myself guitar a bit, and mostly through YouTube, honestly, and the internet. I just kind of, my mom had a guitar, so, and the drive behind that was just wanting to be able to accompany myself singing. And exploring that. So I didn't actually get back to piano from that age of 5 and 6 until right before I was going into the program for music therapy, which I'm sure we'll get to talking about in a little bit. So guitar and voice was kind of my identity for a while. And so as I started building my guitar skills up a little more, went off to university in Halifax at Dalhousie.
Halifax is in the other side, east side of Canada.
East Coast. And it's funny, some people are like, oh, you live on the east of Canada when they're talking about Ottawa. And I was like, well, no, there's even more. So went out. I think part of the reason was my brother had gone out there. I was really, really close with my brother. Part of it was wanting to change and just leaving Ottawa. And part of it was loving the idea of being on a coast. I know part of me was going Halifax or Vancouver at the time. And
Halifax was because your brother was there.
That was one of the huge perks. And it also definitely less expensive to live in Halifax than it is to live in Vancouver. So, and a little bit closer in terms of, so my parents were definitely rooting for, they were like, just keep you in one place. If you're going to leave us, like, let's at least make you guys both in the same spot. So went out there, and initially I was undeclared in my degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and was just kind of excited to see what life was. I mean, it's the first time you're living on your own when you move out, right? So
Yeah, the new adventure.
yeah, totally. And you could be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
So music kind of trickled in the background for the first year and a half that I was in university. I'd play for myself, but I wasn't really playing around. I don't think I really even was playing for the friends that I was meeting. Okay. It just wasn't a main focus.
Okay.
And then I don't remember why, but a friend of mine convinced me for whatever reason to go play at kind of the university's open mic.
Oh, okay.
One of those nights kind of thing. Yeah. And so I went and did it, and I went, oh man, I miss this.
Yeah.
And so started doing it a little more and got into playing with some friends at university. We kind of formed a little band, and we'd play pretty often at the university's like bar. Okay. So it wasn't anything crazy, but
your regular gigs, right?
Yeah. And then the biggest thing that kind of happened while we were doing that, the band Said the Whale, they're actually from Vancouver. They came to Dalhousie, and I think one of their first shows was at Dalhousie. So I think they have kind of a warm spot in their heart for it. And they had basically reached out to the president at the time saying, if you want to open it up to like local talent or a student to be able to open the show for us when we come and play. And so they ended up reaching out to us, which was really cool. It was, it was the first time, I'd ever played. Mind you, obviously everybody was there to see Said the Whale. They weren't there to see us, but we were playing to a packed bar that we're all really excited. And all the members of Said the Whale at the time were super sweet. They came and watched like 90% of our set right up till they had to go get ready, which is, it sucks to say that some musicians don't kind of care.
They don't care.
But they were some of the most genuine people I've ever met, and they invited us up to their like green room after the whole ordeal, and we got to just chat, and that was a really cool experience. And then I finished my degree up. I ended up taking psychology.
Your degree of psychology.
Yeah. So in my second year, so I had started undeclared, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I always had an interest in people and helping in some way. Didn't really know exactly where I wanted that to go. So I ended up switching into psychology in my second year of university after actually being diagnosed with bipolar in the summer of my first year.
You?
Yeah. So it came as a surprise to me at the time too.
You don't look like bipolar.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like, what does bipolar look like? Is it supposed to look like something terrifying? Like, no. But I love that you said that because it's so true. What does mental health look like? It's not these things in these horror movies that people have projected that, it's still people at the end of the day dealing with something. So my experience thankfully wasn't very traumatizing as far as being diagnosed, because that can be a really hard.
And you are in the middle of your psychology degree.
So this was actually right before I switched. So I part of the reason I switched into psychology was because I was diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
Because of the whole experience, I went, I want to understand what's going on myself. And so it was, I'd kind of been, in retrospect, I now know I had kind of gone into a bit of depression after my first year of university. And I mean, at the time I just thought, I'm kind of sad. Life's kind of hard. Yeah. Like how do you know what, how sad something is, or if it's at a clinical level of being depressed, or if it's just you're going through a rough time. And then all of a sudden things were great. I had a boyfriend. I had a great group of friends. I had a great job that I was loving. Life seemed to be going great, like really great. And it wasn't until I went home and visited my parents and some of my friends that they went, I think something's a little different. And it was more so kind of a racy energy that I had. So it wasn't that anything was blatantly wrong, but so at the time I was in a hypomanic episode. So basically what that means, I mean, it looks very different for every person. But for me at the time, it was very racy. So I was, I barely needed any sleep. I was really happy most of the time, which is part of it too. I felt like life was just figured out. Everything was okay. And sometimes mania can come with like hallucinations or delusions, which is what you read in a textbook and you think, oh, someone's seen, an image appear or a person appear. And I feel like that puts out an extreme case. And that can be the case for some people. But for myself, it wasn't anything blatantly, oh, something's wrong or something's going on right now. Okay. For me, it just felt like life was great. And
I'm super happy.
And yeah, so kind of checking in with my parents and some of my close friends, and my mom and my dad at the time just asked me, would you be willing to go get checked out and talk to somebody? And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, you guys are ridiculous. Like, nothing's wrong with me. Like, but whatever. Like, if that's going to make your peace of mind. And went and was diagnosed. And I am curious.
Okay. That's an interesting story.
Yeah. So, and I was fortunate at the time to not be admitted, because that's the experience that when you're diagnosed, if it seems like you are a risk at all to yourself or to somebody else, you're admitted to inpatient psychiatry, and basically just to make sure you're okay for the first little bit. And that can be a really traumatizing experience for people. And I'm very thankful to say I didn't have that experience. So I was allowed to go home, and without making this entire episode about that, that kind of shaped my interest into diving into psychology. And so I did go back to school and I took some less courses, initially starting back into it, just keeping in mind with my own mental health and making sure everything.
You're more like, I say like now that you know this about you, like you can analyze better.
Totally. Because at the time, I mean, and it was interesting because I wasn't ignorant to what bipolar was or what mental health, like it's a conversation that I'd had many times. But it's interesting that it very much rang true, kind of the saying that you never think of yourself as being the one in that position until it happens. So that dove me into psychology and kind of wanting to understand my own mind, but also just opened up a whole field of, oh, if this is what bipolar is, and it's so not what social media or even some of the textbooks I was reading was kind of making it seem to be, it also drove a passion in me to go, okay, well, I need to explore what this is. And I'm sure a lot of other people are not experiencing what social media or movies are kind of projecting as these extreme cases.
Yeah, because they just put the extreme case, like the worst case they can imagine, or they can happen that, but they just put it in the pictures.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality too of when someone who has bipolar is not depressed or isn't manic, that they're in a completely quote unquote normal state of mind. So that drove the psychology thing, but I wasn't drawn to be a psychologist or psychiatrist. or do research in that field. That didn't draw me. So after I graduated, I actually kind of went back to music a bit. I was serving and started playing at a couple local bars around Halifax. And Halifax is, have you ever been to Halifax?
No.
Okay.
But it's like a college town, right?
Big time. Yeah. And a huge part of the culture there is kind of drinking and live music is the downtown scene.
And all the young people.
Yeah. All the university students.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So there was lots of opportunities to play at different bars and different venues. So I ended up doing that actually full time for about a year and a half. I had like a gig at a local wing night, like every Thursday for their beer and wing night. I'd play for 3 hours and I'd do covers of it would be mostly crowd pleasers because in that kind of setting you're playing, you're not, it's not about you.
Yeah.
People are there to have fun with their friends and drink and sing along to songs they know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, that was great in terms of I built a huge repertoire of just all the sing-along songs, at least on the East Coast Canadian.
Yeah, but the good thing is it's English, so like the language is English, and of course I exactly know what kind of bar and kind of like playing
atmosphere.
Atmosphere.
Yeah. So yeah, that was great. A couple different bars, and I actually had a contract at the Navy base in Halifax for a while. So a couple of the guys at the Navy base came to one of the pub nights I was doing and just loved me. And so they reached out to their head person and ended up making it happen that I had a contract there weekly to go play for them, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So you started after you get your degrees. You stay in Halifax for what, like 1 year?
Yeah, about a year and a half to maybe more closer to a year after I graduate. Year to 2 years. Let's
playing.
Don't quote me on it clearly. But yeah, after playing, and I served for a little bit, but mostly doing music. And then my current fiance wasn't at the time, but
Do you met there
we met in Halifax,
okay.
yeah. And so we decided to kind of very impromptu move to Vancouver. It was part of like a couple of our friends were moving out, and partly we just clearly needed a change and we're a little bored.
Yeah.
And wanted an adventure. And so we packed up we literally had 3 packed bags and our 2 cats. And we've
You're already living together.
Yeah, we were. And we flew quite literally across the country from one coast to the other.
Yeah.
So that was in 2018, September of 2018 is when we got here.
Better weather.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, rainy, but Halifax was almost just as rainy, but it just also had the intense winter
and short summer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've fallen in love with British Columbia. I can't.
2019?
End of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So it hasn't been too long, but it's long enough for it to feel like home.
Yeah. It's a cool city. And
Very much.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, mountains, ocean, people for all around the world.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, lots of opportunities. And so when I got here initially, it was a little bit of a shock of going from a place of somewhat being a big fish in a small pond to moving to a big city where I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. And I didn't necessarily want to pursue music, but I loved the idea of still being able to perform every once in a while.
Yeah.
And kind of did a cold reach out to a whole bunch of different places when I initially I didn't even know who to reach out to or where. And didn't hear back from anybody. And so kind of felt a little discouraged of like, okay, maybe it's just a sign that I meant to do something else.
Yeah.
Or so worked in the service industry for a little bit, like in restaurants and bars for a bit. And kind of then came to the point where I went, okay, I want something a little more. I And
you have your psychology degree, and you never tried to go to follow that career?
I didn't know what I wanted with it. I had my degree and I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. So
You pursue the music, but you just cannot
well,
find
and at
like
the time too, I think between playing music and working in restaurants, you're making some pretty decent money.
Yeah.
And so coming right out of university and being broke and, it was enticing to just be able to work a job immediately that was like, oh, I'm not making just minimum wage. Yeah. So that part of that, and also I really enjoy the service industry. I think, and that ties into just liking people and helping people. And it may sound cheesy, but in some way, if you're a server, like you can just make someone's day a little better by doing a great job or, paying attention to them or talking to them for a second.
Yeah.
And that, I think, aspect of it, I really liked. But after a while, I was going, this isn't quite enough for me. And that's where after kind of a lot of thinking and processing and sitting with myself and figuring out what I wanted, came to music therapy and felt kind of silly for not coming to it earlier in my life because it makes so much sense to me now. The combination of two of my hugest passions of people and music. And with that said, it's a field that isn't that well known and hasn't been around forever. But it's something that kind of, once I came across it, I went, oh my God, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need to be doing.
Combining your two careers that you have.
Yeah.
Like music and therapy. Well, psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But also, do you enter to Guild & Co. to work at 2020, right? No, 21.
21. Yeah,
21.
It was...
I remember because you are about to enter to music therapy.
Yeah.
You told me, like, I'm nervous because I'm getting dev to enter to the career. And I was saying, like you are investing in yourself. So do it.
Yeah. It was kind of more by chance, actually, that I came to Guild & Co. So that was like summer of 2021. I was coming out of a really bad workplace and had recently ran into a friend that used to work at Guild & Co. that is still good friends with a whole bunch of the people that work there that I'd gone to high school with. And I hadn't seen him in like 10 years. And I had recently ran into him and he had worked in the service industry a lot. And so I'm kind of in a bit of a pickle. Like I had to walk out on this job. It was a toxic environment kind of thing. Do you have any connections or any leads? And he led me right to Guilt. And I had an interview and the rest is kind of history. I went in there and I couldn't be more thankful for, it's such an amazing place to work, obviously to be around live music all the time. Yeah. But also the connections that I built there, both with the staff, but also with the music industry in Vancouver is incredible. That's something that I hadn't expected or planned on. And it's been such an added bonus to coming in and
work, and then you get the connection that you met a lot of musicians there.
Totally.
They're like the ones that are playing and the other ones that are going to just having some drinks and enjoy the music.
Yeah, but just being able to have that intro to the community as being someone who wasn't born and raised in Vancouver. And as I said, coming initially felt like it was kind of hard to come into the scene if you didn't know anybody. So I feel so lucky to have been able to have that there and still have that. It's such a beautiful place for so many reasons.
Cool. And now tell me about the music therapy. How is well, you're about to finish that.
So I'm about to finish kind of the schooling portion of it. So in April, I'll be done all my classes. And then there's an internship to do before you're able to take the board exam and then start working as a music therapist.
The board exam. They also have
it sounds scary.
It's like the lawyers.
I mean, I don't think we can quite make the comparison to the LSATs, but
you have to take the test.
But yes, in the same realm,
to prove that you have the knowledge.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. They want to be making sure that people who are qualified
Exactly.
are working.
Yeah, and the music therapy is like off camera. We are talking and we talk about this in Guild. And the first thing that came to my mind, it was like, oh, so I think this can work for autism kids or like mentally problems with people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, most people's reaction is like when they hear music therapy, they're like, what is that? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And in essence, music therapy is just using music as the main form of communication and expression in therapy. So a lot of people are used to verbal therapy, and the idea of therapy, they just think of two people sitting in a room and just talking to each other.
Yeah.
And that can be hugely beneficial, but there's also all these different kinds of therapy, a lot of arts therapies, such as music therapy, visual art therapy, drama therapy, that use different forms of expression and communication to do the work as opposed to just talking about it. And there's so many different people that can benefit from it. And something that I love about music therapy is it's so personalized because it takes music is something that most people in my life I've met have a personal connection with. Whether it you can have very different tastes in music, and what's relaxing or pump somebody up can be very different in terms of what it actually sounds like. But a lot of people, music is something that's important to them, and taking that and then using that as a base to do work on processing feelings and thoughts and issues that come up in life is I think is incredible. And there's tons of research around different demographics that really, really benefit from music therapy. Like you were saying, people on the autism spectrum, especially children, a lot of times they're way more visual and auditory learners. So just telling or speaking instructions or speaking just for the only form of communication doesn't work the same way that music or pictures or videos might. And the same goes for long-term care, for Alzheimer's and dementia. Music can have such a huge impact at connecting the brain in ways that are able to bring these people in the moment with you. I've had experiences myself of going in and somebody dealing with pretty aggressive dementia and being very disoriented. And when you start singing "You Are My Sunshine" or a song from their childhood that they know, it's incredible how they are right there with you cognitively. So it's really, really powerful stuff to explore. And I'm still learning and still exploring, but it's an incredible field.
And a music therapy session can be like is music of course involved, but also like a dialogue with the patient. So it's different kinds of sessions.
Totally. So depending on the music therapist's approach, depending on the client, depending on what the person needs, there can be variations in terms of how much music making and music listening and how much that is a part of the session versus how much verbal dialogue is interwoven. But for the most part, it's usually a combination of both for instance, doing an improvisation together, say about what happened in the day, and then afterwards talking about what that felt like and what came out in the music and why that might be.
Okay. Yeah, I something that is stay with me when you say like different kind of therapies, and you say just music or drama or like a different kind of, and say like it's different ways to express yourself. So it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because somebody is not like me. Like I'm not good to speak my feelings, but maybe if I write it, maybe
Yeah.
can work, right?
Yeah, and a lot of
Yeah.
people are just,
Maybe that's the reason the diaries exist.
hey.
I never think about that.
No, it's true though, and a lot of people have a hard time talking about their feelings and expressing themselves. It's often a really vulnerable space to step into, and having different means to do it that might feel a little more comfortable. And whether it's music therapy, whether it's art therapy, and whether it is just talking, whether some people do benefit hugely from being able to just say things out loud. But there's space for everybody to be supported in the way that they need to be supported, as opposed to being like, here's therapy, you fit into our box and we'll fix you. It's like, why don't we just be there for people in the way that they need to be? And it's so cool. And I feel so lucky to be able to be going into a profession where it's music, which is something I love and I'm good at. And it's psychology and people, which is something I'm fascinated in and I really care about. And being able to offer that to the people that it does work for.
Yeah, and do you need to be a musician?
So for music therapy, basically vocal, guitar, and piano, there needs to be a certain proficiency on the three of those to be able to facilitate music therapy session, and anything added on to that. You know, if you can play the bagpipes or or whatever it is,
at
great.
least you have to understand the music too.
But there's a foundation. Yeah, exactly. So I did have to go back before starting the actual music therapy program. I had to take basically a year's worth of a music degree and take, you know, music history, music theory, all the academic side of music that I'd kind of avoided most of my life by just playing by ear.
Yeah. Like do you know, like, I met some musicians and say like I just learn by my ear.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And
that was
can
me
create
for
music.
most of my life up until, and I will say I am so thankful that this program kind of forced me to do the work of understanding music theory, and because it has benefited me so much as a musician.
Yeah.
But it was very fun to kind of get away with for the first 15 years of my musical career. Just
but now you have that plus.
Oh, exactly. Right? Well, I kind of laugh now in retrospect. I'd play with people at times and they, what song is this key, or what key is this song in? And I go, I have no idea.
You can hear it?
Like, I was like, I know what to play and I know it sounds right. Yeah. And so now to have a further understanding is great.
It's a whole big thing, like reading music and understanding the keys and everything.
Totally.
Because
it's like a language.
Yeah. It's a big language and a hard one for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I think for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of musicians that, also I know like the more musicians that I know that they know how to read music is the ones who play metal instruments. It's curious, but they always know how to read music. And I would say like people with keyboards or guitar, they just by ear.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see that. I mean, there's a lot more. I feel like it's pretty common for singer-songwriters or people who are predominantly singers to learn an instrument to just be able to accompany themselves with.
Yeah.
Which is definitely the start of my kind of musical career. I feel like it lends well to that because it's less work. It's like if you can, it's true. If you can figure it out by ear and just watching a couple videos, why would you put the effort in? But you should.
And Morgan, do you write music? Do you have your own songs and everything?
Yeah. So I'm no longer pursuing my musical career. I'm obviously focused on music therapy, but I love performing still. And working at Guilt & Co. is a lovely opportunity to every once in a while jump up on stage and being able to play. But music songwriting for me has been something that comes out sporadically as life happens. Kind of. So I could write a couple songs in a couple days, and I could also go a couple years without writing a song. That's kind of how my experience with songwriting has been. But I love writing songs. I think it's a really cathartic way. I mean, not to sound too cheesy, but with music therapy as a self therapeutic experience and activity of being able to release your feelings around something big that's happened to you. And that's how I've treated a lot of the songs that I've written as of ways of just expressing, whether it's my happiness or my grief or my excitement or whatever it is. And it puts it in a means that feels more than just saying it. So it feels like it elevates it more than just writing it out in my diary or
it's another way to express.
Exactly.
Right? and you like us how can I say it? Do you record these songs? Do you have it uploaded somewhere?
I do. So I do have a YouTube channel, and I have a couple of songs up on SoundCloud. And that is the means that I keep for when I do want to put music out. I definitely will say I'm not consistently releasing music. And I mean, that part I did find hard, and I have so much respect for musicians that are on top of it's so hard to self-promote and constantly be on top of all these different things. And that was part of the reason that I felt that pursuing music full-time wasn't fully for me. It's hard work.
Yeah. Making some new music, and now you have to promote it.
Yep.
You have to be
and
in
then
all
there's
the
also an
different
expectation of timeline of if you're putting out music, you have to keep putting out music on a timeline. And for me, just the way that I write music, that causes me anxiety to think about, like, you have to write a song at this time. And it's like, well, is it going to be genuine or authentic if it's on or if it's just for work?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I do. So I have a YouTube channel. I have, and for me, I kind of treat it as a lovely, just public memory bank of what I'm doing and what I have done with music. Yeah. So yeah, I was writing a lot more in my first year of university when I was out in Halifax. I wrote a couple songs out there. But for the past couple of years, it's more been dispersed. My focus has definitely been on school. But I wrote a song for my cousin's wedding, which was really fun. That was the first time I'd ever written a song for another person, which is a whole nother experience than writing for yourself. Which is also in the world of music therapy that I'm learning how to take people's lyrics who aren't necessarily musicians and help create a song for them. And it's a very different experience than writing for yourself.
Yeah. Because when you are writing for yourself, you are putting your feelings or your thoughts in that lyrics.
Yeah. Well, and you just have to, exactly, okay, this doesn't sound right to me. This does. And you can feel confident about that. But if you're writing for another person, you can try a whole bunch of things, and all you can do is ask for their feedback and if they like it or not. Yeah. And if they say they like it, great, but how much do they like it? Is it right? So it's a whole nother world.
Okay. And what is the name of your YouTube channel?
Morgan Stedman. It's my name. Yeah. So MorganStedman. So if you type that into YouTube or to Google, I'm pretty sure I pop up.
Okay.
And anything that I do release definitely goes that way. And sometimes I just do a cover of a song that I'm feeling. Yeah. But that's also a New Year's resolution, to record a couple more videos, because I've got lots of friends and family that don't live in Vancouver, and despite not performing, they're always going, "Can you just send a video or an audio of you singing? I miss you."
Yeah. Well, when you play in Guild and nobody record a video and always with a lot of noise.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. Well, something that you want to add, Morgan?
Just thank you. And it's so awesome to be able to come here and chat. And this is such an awesome channel you've got set up. I think it's great that you're supporting musicians and giving this platform to talk about things like music therapy, like mental health. Like,
I'm so happy that I can learn the stuff from musicians and things like that. Because it's musicians, it's people like you that do therapy with music. It's people in the music industry, maybe a promoter, or I want to bring here Jordan to tell me about everything about Guild. And
yeah.
it's like learning is not just musicians, or is the music industry.
The music world.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
and it's
big.
all connected too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's incredible. So yeah, all I want to add is thank you.
No, thank you for being here, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.